Hi students, in this lecture we will continue our study of human population. In this lecture we will be learning what determines how populations grow and the relationship between fertility and culture. Let's get going. After completing this lecture video, you should be able to answer the following questions. 1. What are the factors that determine how populations grow? 2. What are the differences in population growth in various parts of the world? And 3. What is the relationship between culture and fertility? Many factors determine how populations grow, stabilize, and even shrink. The study of population growth is called demographics. In this part of the lecture, we will look at the ways that we measure and describe human populations and look at some of the factors that contribute to population growth. The United Nations estimate of 7 billion people in 2011 is only an estimate. Even in this age of information technology and advanced communication, counting the number of people in the world is an inexact science. Some countries never have taken a census, and some that have been done may not be accurate. Governments overstate or understate the populations to make their countries appear larger and more important, or smaller and more stable than they really are. Some individuals, especially if they are homeless, refugees, or illegal aliens, may not want to be counted or identified. We really live in two different demographic worlds. One of these worlds is poor, young, and growing rapidly, while the other is rich, old, and shrinking in population size. The poorer world is occupied by the vast majority of people who live in the less developed countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. See figure 4.6. These countries represent 80% of the world population, but will contribute more than 90% of all projected future growth. The richer world is made up of North America, Western Europe, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. As you can see in this figure, the less developed countries of the world will see the greatest amount of growth. How we address growth in these countries will determine our ultimate success in controlling population to avoid reaching or exceeding the Earth's carrying capacity. To understand how to control growth in these developing countries, be sure to watch the TED talk by Hans Rosling of the Karolinska Institute. A link was provided on the lesson page. This slide demonstrates how a disease like HIV/AIDS can affect population growth rates and life expectancy. The situation is extremely bad in many African countries, where AIDS and other communicable diseases are killing people at a terrible rate. In Zimbabwe, Botswana, Zambia, and Namibia, for example, up to 39% of the adult population have AIDS or are HIV positive. Without AIDS, the average life expectancy would have been nearly 70 years. Now, with AIDS, Botswana's life expectancy has dropped to only 31.6 years. Life expectancy is the average age that a newborn infant can expect to attain in any given society. The populations of many African countries are now falling because of this terrible disease. Altogether, Africa's population is expected to be nearly 200 million lower in 2050 than it would have been without AIDS. Although the world as a whole still has an average fertility rate of 2.5, growth rates are lower now than at any time since World War II. If fertility declines, like those in Brazil, were to occur everywhere in the world, our total population would begin to decline by the end of the 21st century. Rapidly growing, developing countries such as Brazil often have lower crude death rates, 6 per 1,000 currently, than do the more developed, slowly growing countries such as Denmark, 12 per 1,000, even though their life expectancies are considerably lower. This is because a rapidly growing country has proportionately more youths and fewer elderly than a more slowly growing country. For most of human history, life expectancy in most societies probably has been 35 to 40 years. This means not that no one lived past age 40, but instead that many people died at early ages, mostly early childhood, which balanced out those who managed to live longer. The 20th century saw a global transformation in human health unmatched in history. This revolution can be seen in the dramatic increases in life expectancy in most places. In 1950, there were only 130 million people in the world over 65 years old. In 2012, more than 540 million had reached this age. By 2050, the UN predicts that there will be 2 older persons for every child in the world. Countries such as Japan, France, and Germany already are concerned that they don't have enough young people to fill jobs and support their retirement system. They are encouraging couples to have more children. The total fertility rate is the number of children born to an average woman in a population during her entire reproductive life. Upper-class women in 17th and 18th century Europe, whose babies were given to wet nurses immediately after birth, sometimes had 25 or 30 pregnancies. The highest recorded total fertility rate for working-class people are among some Anabaptist agricultural groups in North America who have averaged up to 12 children per woman. In most tribal or traditional societies, food shortages, health problems, and cultural practices limit total fertility to about 6 or 7 children per woman, even without modern methods of birth control. We learned that the fertility rate is the average number of children born to a woman in her lifetime, and that zero population growth for developed countries ensues when the fertility rate is 2.1 children per woman. Zero population growth occurs when birth plus immigration in a population just equals death plus emigration. It takes several generations of replacement level fertility in which people just replace themselves to reach zero population growth. Where infant mortality rates are high, the replacement level may be 5 or more children per couple. In the more highly developed countries, however, this rate is usually about 2.1 children per couple because some people are infertile, have children who not survive, or choose not to have children. So in developed countries like the US, a fertility rate of 2.1 yields ZPG. Worldwide, the average life expectancy rose from about 40 to 67.2 years over the last 100 years. The greatest progress was in developing countries. For example, in 1900, the average Indian man or woman could expect to live about 23 years. A century later, although India had an annual per capita income of only $3,500 US, the average life expectancy for both men and women had nearly tripled and was very close to that of countries with 10 times its income level. Longer lives were due primarily to better nutrition, improved sanitation, clean water, and education, rather than to miracle drugs or high-tech medicine. As income rise, so does life expectancy, up to about $4,000 US. Above that amount, the curve levels off. Some countries, such as South Africa and Russia, have far lower life expectancies than their GDP would suggest. Jordan, on the other hand, which has only 1/10 the per capita GDP of the United States, actually has a higher life expectancy. A population growing rapidly by natural increase has more young people than does a stationary population. One way to show these differences is to graph age classes in histograms. In Niger, which was growing at a rate of 3.9% per year in 2012, about half the population is in the pre-reproductive category, below age 15. Even if total fertility rates fell abruptly, the total number of births and the population size would continue to grow for some years as these young people entered reproductive age, an example of population momentum. Both rapidly growing countries and slowly growing countries can have a problem with their dependency ratio, or the number of non-working compared to working individuals in a population. In Niger, for example, each working person supports a high number of children. In the United States, by contrast, a declining working population is now supporting an ever larger number of retired persons. The shape of each age class histogram is distinctive for a population that is rapidly growing. Niger, stable, Sweden, or declining, Singapore. Horizontal bars represent the percentage of the country's population in consecutive age classes, 0 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, etc. In rapidly growing populations, the population of young people greatly exceeds the population of old people. By the mid-21st century, children under age 15 will make up a smaller percentage of world population, whereas people over age 65 will contribute an increasing share of the population. A number of social and economic pressures affect decisions about family size, which in turn affect the population at large. In this section, we will examine both positive and negative pressures on reproduction and look at how culture influences fertility. Before you continue this video, make sure you watch the video about culture and fertility. Children can be a source of pleasure, pride, and comfort. They may be the only source of support for elderly parents in countries without a social security system. Where infant mortality rates are high, couples may need to have children, many children, to ensure that at least a few will survive to take care of them when they're old. Where there is little opportunity for upward mobility, children give status in society, express parental creativity, and provide a sense of continuity and accomplishment otherwise missing from life. Often children are valuable to the family, not only for future income, but even as a source of current income and help with household chores. In much of the developing world, small children tend domestic animals and younger siblings, fetch water, gather firewood, help grow crops, or sell things in the marketplace. Parental desire for children, rather than an unmet need for contraceptives, may be the most important factor in population growth in many cases. Society also has a need to replace members who die or become incapacitated. This need often is codified in cultural or religious values that encourage bearing and raising children. Some societies look upon families with few or no children with pity or contempt. The idea of deliberately controlling fertility may be shocking or even taboo. Women who are pregnant or have small children have special status and protection. Boys frequently are more valued than girls because they carry on the family name and are expected to support their parents in old age. Couples may have more children than they really want in an attempt to produce a son. Male pride often is linked to having as many children as possible. In Niger and Cameroon, for example, men on average want 12.6 and 11.2 children respectively. In rural areas with little mechanized agriculture, children are needed to tend livestock, care for younger children, and help parents with household chores, whereas agriculture and mechanized rural families view children just as urban families do, helpful, but not critical to survival. This affects the decision on how many children to have. In more highly developed countries, many pressures tend to reduce fertility. Higher education and personal freedom for women often result in decisions to limit childbearing. A desire to spend money and time on other goods and activities offsets the desire to have children. When women have opportunities to earn a salary, they are less likely to stay home and have many children. Not only do many women find the challenge and variety of a career attractive, but the money that they earn outside the home becomes an important part of the family budget. Thus, education and socioeconomic status are usually inversely related to fertility in richer countries. In less developed countries, where feeding and clothing children can be a minimal expense, adding one more child to a family usually doesn't cost much. By contrast, raising a child in a developed country can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time the child finishes school and is independent. Under these circumstances, parents are more likely to choose to have one or two children on whom they can concentrate their time, energy, and financial resources. In this lesson, we have learned that we live in a demographically divided world. While population in the developed world is growing slowly, or actually declining, the population of the developing world is skyrocketing, owing to cultural preferences for large families, and also because in developing countries children are used for labor. This is called pronatalist pressure. From Hans Rosing's video, which you need to watch separately, we learned that the primary way in which we can control population growth is to decrease infant mortality, improve women's education, and provide economic support for families.